All right, let's dive right in. We're going to be talking about a moment that honestly changed everything. We're talking about the assassination of President John F. Kennedy.
There's this quote from Clint Hill. He was the Secret Service agent with Jackie Kennedy. He said, "It's my belief that the United States lost its innocence on November 22nd, 1963. And that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? This wasn't just the death of a president. For so many people, it felt like the end of something, a kind of optimism we've been chasing ever since.
So to really understand what happened that day, you have to think of it as two totally different stories, two completely separate lives on a collision course. On one side, you've got a president, at the absolute peak of his power. And on the other, a resentful loner who was just desperate to mean something. And both of them were heading straight for Dallas, Texas. So let's break that down. You've got JFK, right? He's in Texas for a super important political trip. He's trying to lock down votes for a '64 re-election campaign. The mood is fantastic, people are cheering. And then you've got Lee Harvey Oswald. His life is the complete opposite. It's all instability, isolation, anger. And that morning, he heads to his job at the Texas School Book Depository, carrying this long brown paper package. When someone asks, he just says, "Oh, it's curtain rods."
So who was this guy, Lee Harvey Oswald? Well, his life was pretty much a textbook case of alienation. His dad died before he was even born. He was constantly moving around, even spent time in an orphanage. In fact, a psychologist flagged him early on for schizoid tendencies and emotional isolation. And here's the thing. He was smart. He had an IQ of 118, but he was just filled with this rage. And that anger, well, it found a home in Marxist ideology. It was like the perfect framework for everything he felt was wrong with America.
Now, back in Dallas, the vibe was actually pretty great that morning. Even though the city had this reputation, they called it the City of Hate because of some pretty extreme right-wing groups. The crowds were huge and they were cheering for Kennedy, and JFK, well, he wanted to feel that connection. He insisted they take the bubble top off the limousine. He wanted zero barriers between him and the people, a decision that would, of course, prove to be absolutely fateful. And then it happened. In just a handful of seconds, the entire world changed. Let's walk through those 6 seconds that literally redrew the map of American history.
Okay, so it's exactly 12:30 p.m. The motorcade makes that slow turn right in front of the Texas School Book Depository. And then, bang, 3 shots ring out. The first one hits Kennedy in the neck. The third, that was the one, the fatal shot to the head. That second shot, it's always been a bit of a mystery, but honestly, it didn't matter. The damage was done in less time than it's taking me to even say this.
And inside that car, you can't even imagine the horror. Jackie Kennedy's words screamed in that moment. They've shot his head off. I love you, Jack. It's so raw. It brings the whole awful personal tragedy right into focus. As the limo just floored it, racing towards Parkland Hospital, Dealey Plaza just exploded into chaos. Total pandemonium. People screaming, running for cover. There are famous pictures of a father throwing himself on top of his son on the grass. A day that started as a celebration had just become ground zero for a national nightmare.
So, while the president is fighting for his life, one of the most intense manhunts in American history kicks off. Suddenly, the city of Dallas isn't just a dot on a map, it's the center of the entire world's attention. And this whole thing went down incredibly fast. First, the shooter escapes from the book depository. Police swarm the building and find a rifle stashed away. Then, less than an hour later, a Dallas police officer, J.D. Tippit, gets shot and killed after he stops a guy who matches the suspect's description. Finally, a tip leads the cops to the Texas Theater, and that's where they find him and arrest him. The whole thing, from the assassination to the arrest of Lee Harvey Oswald, took just over an hour. It's wild.
So now they have him in custody and they parade him in front of this mob of reporters. And Oswald, he's just defiant. He's shouting to the cameras, "I didn't shoot anybody. No, sir." It was this completely chaotic scene broadcast live while the entire country was just glued to their TVs trying to figure out what in the world was going on.
But just when it seemed like maybe, just maybe we'd get some answers, the story takes another insane turn. And this time, the whole country watched it happen live. 2 days later, they're moving Oswald from the city jail. It's in the basement of the police headquarters. And out of nowhere, this local nightclub owner named Jack Ruby steps out of the crowd and shoots him point blank on live television. Millions of people just watch the accused assassin get murdered. Can you even imagine? It was just one layer of unbelievable tragedy piled on top of another.
So why did Jack Ruby do it? His official story was, well, it was this kind of twisted act of chivalry.
He claimed he wanted to spare Jackie Kennedy the pain of a trial. But what he really did was guarantee we'd never get a trial. With Oswald dead, the case was closed without ever being heard in a court of law. And that right there is the moment that sealed this event as a permanent source of suspicion and conspiracy theories.
Okay, so let's get into the weeds a little bit, because this is where so much of the doubt comes from. We're talking about the famous single bullet theory. Now, I know it sounds completely impossible, but when you look at the actual science, it starts to make a lot more sense. So the key thing you have to understand is a concept called bullet yaw. Okay, think about it like this. A stable bullet, it flies perfectly straight through the air, but as soon as it hits something, like a person, it can start to tumble, end over end. One expert described it perfectly. It's like a badly thrown football. And that tumbling action is absolutely critical to understanding what happened here.
Now, this is what's so fascinating. The specific bullet Oswald used, this 6.5mm Carcano round, was kind of unique. It was designed to be super stable. It would punch through a target first, and then it would start to yaw or tumble. So when you trace the path, it totally explains how one bullet could pass through Kennedy's neck, start to destabilize, and then hit Governor Connally with that weird, elongated, tumbling wound that baffled everyone for so long.
And what about the gun itself? Was it some kind of high-tech super spy weapon? Nope, not even close. It was a cheap $13 Italian-made military surplus rifle. Investigators have actually fired the same kind of gun from that same window in the depository, and they all say the same thing. The shots were not really tough. You did not need to be some elite marksman to pull this off. So here's the bottom line. When modern forensics teams came in with 3D laser scanners and recreated the entire scene in Dealey Plaza down to the millimeter, everything lined up. Their conclusion was pretty straightforward. The physical evidence shows that one single bullet behaving exactly the way it was designed to absolutely could have, and almost certainly did, cause all of those non-fatal wounds.
And yet, even with all that science, the questions just don't go away, do they? The assassination left this deep scar in the American mind, and it's really worth asking why. Why can't we let it go?
I mean, why is it so hard for us to accept the official story? How can one loner loser deranged Marxist, as one investigator called him, be the cause for something so enormous? The cause just doesn't seem to match the effect. The man just seems too small for the crime.
And maybe, just maybe, it all boils down to this really powerful, almost primal idea, something the author Vincent Bugliosi put perfectly. A peasant cannot strike down the king. The idea that one complete nobody, just an angry, forgotten man with a cheap gun, could reach out and change the entire course of world history. For a lot of us, that's a truth that's just too random, too chaotic, and maybe just too scary to believe. And that's why all these years later, we're still asking why.